Hello guys, welcome to Dawim Tech, and today we will be reviewing AITC KM600 M.2 SSD that I've been using for a year now. I will share all my experience and we will do some benchmarks on how it will perform even after a year of regular day-to-day use. But before that, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that notification bell for more tech content like this. If you don't know AITC is a brand or a company that originated in Taiwan and has been in the PC industry for a decade already. They just entered the Philippine market and we've already reviewed some of their products in the past on this channel. So back to the KM600. The KM600 is a Gen 3 by 4 M.2 SSD with 2280 form factor. Based on its specs, it has a sequential read of 2500 MB per second and sequential write of 1800 MB per second, which we will test how close the specs based on our own test. It comes with 128GB, 256GB, 512GB, and 1TB variant, and the one we have here is the 512GB variant. And lastly, it has a 5-year warranty, which is really nice. Before we dive in, this SSD is around $40 or more or less 2,200 pesos converted to PHP. For its price and specs, there are now SSDs are around below 2,000, which means it will be really hard to compete with those prices already. But let's see how my 1-year experience goes, as well as the benchmark after a year if this SSD is worth its price. But take note that the SRP of that was made last year, and if I'm not mistaken, this SSD is already discontinued and there are new and improved models of AITC SSDs like the AM600 Ultra. But the reason behind this video, even though the SSD is already not in the market, is to show if the AITC brand or SSDs they made are reliable. For the quality, it seems like this SSD is similar to the other SSDs, but this one it uses 3D TLC, which means that it uses the cheapest part to increase the size of the storage, which in turn has a negative effect on lowering the performance and endurance compared to other types of 3D NAND chip. It also has its own heatsink, which is good for motherboards that don't have M.2 heatsink covers. The DRAM cache is also the most common question here on my channel on SSD reviews. Unfortunately, this SSD doesn't have a DRAM cache and I've confirmed this with AITC. It also has LDPC, meaning low density parity check, which helps the SSD have a longer lifespan by consuming only 8% of power compared to a regular hard disk. They did this to compensate on the 3D NAND chip they used to provide higher storage than performance. As for my 1-year feedback on the quality, I've used this SSD for around 6 months as my main storage, and for that time I didn't experience any issues with this SSD. After that, I used this as my secondary storage to store my games and editing software. Until now, it's giving me a good performance. As you can see in the hard disk Sentinel, it still has 100% health after 1 year of usage. Although you can only see that time that I've used this as my secondary SSD compared to the Sabrent 1TB SSD that I've used only for around 8 months and now down to 83% health, although I'm using this as my main operating system SSD. And it's really impressive to have the health as 100%. I'm not really sure how accurate the hard disk Sentinel when it comes to its data, but I think the LDPC is really doing its job. Now for the benchmarks. These benchmarks are done after my 1-year usage of the KM600 SSD. Unfortunately, my data was lost, so I don't have any data now to compare from 1 year before and 1 year after. I used the Crystal Disk Mark software, ASSD benchmark, and the ATTO or ATO disk benchmark with 3 different tests, each to get the average result. But since this is the very first M.2 SSD review we've done in my channel, we still don't have enough data on this component. So instead, we will compare my test results to the results of AITC that is showing in their stores. So we will check how close the results we got to the results they are endorsing as well as on the specs sheet. For our first benchmark test via Crystal Disk Benchmark, we got an impressive numbers with our test. In the read speed, we got 18.7% higher than AITC's benchmark. For the write speed, we got 13.6% higher. For random 4K read, we have 17.6% higher. And random 4K write is 44.3% higher than AITC's benchmark. For the AES SSD benchmark, as you can see in our tweet results versus the results shown by AITC, it seems like the version of the AITC in terms of random 4K write speed is 56% higher than my testing, so not sure what happened there. Even the write speed compared to my testing has only a 3% difference. All in all, the comparison between my testing and AITC's testing are positive and doesn't give any misleading data to consumers. I'm also impressed by how the KM600 is performing on my testing even after a year of usage for gaming and other editing tasks. Overall, the quality of this SSD is superb, which I didn't expect, to be honest. I have other SSDs that I've used on my own PC, and some of them are from well-known brands, but after 4 to 6 months, some of them are having blue screens or issues related to their performance, and worst part, some of them died less than in a year. Results of the benchmarks are also impressive, as you can see in our testings. This SSD gives the stated read and write speed, which is really good and has a 5-year warranty for a sub 2K SSD. Transfer rates and download rates on this SSD are pretty decent as well, and for a year that still has 100% health compared to a branded SSD is really impressive. I've used this SSD as an OS drive way back for around 6 months, but to be honest, it didn't give me any kind of issues or health reduction via hard disk Sentinel. There are pros and cons to this SSD, of course. The pros are good performance, quality over time, and durability based on my personal experience. For the cons, of course, brand reliability might be a big issue for other people, and the price is converted to PHP. I saw some stores online selling this SSD at around 3,000 pesos, which I think will give you more option in that price range. But if you can buy this SSD at around 2,000, then it's a steal and on a competitive price range. But with the current market of SSD, and other types of storage, this price range is really hard to compete now. All in all, this SSD is for people who are not brand focused, looking for quality SSD and want to try other brands for their PCs. But if you are unsure about the brand, especially the reliability, then you can skip this SSD and get a branded one for your own assurance and peace of mind, because we don't want to waste our hard-earned money, especially if you are unsure of the brand. When it comes to its performance, reliability, and quality, based on my experience for a year, I would say I can recommend this SSD to anyone who wants to have an upgrade for their old PC or even to their new PC build. So what do you think, guys? Are AITC SSDs really worth buying? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, or if you have your own SSD, particular this SSD, kindly share your experience in the comment section so other people can see. And that's it for our review of the AITC KM600 512 gigs M.2 SSD, and see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.